So I've been involved, or I was involved peripherally on the Flint issues. I've been less involved on the negotiation of settlement, but I was involved in the investigation. What I will say about Flint is Flint is not the evidence of the failure of law; it's evidence of the failure of people. So the United States Safe Drinking Water Act is a reasonably strong area, is a reasonably strong regulatory tool. And what Flint did in switching its water supply to a closer water supply that had some corrosive effect on older pipes is not that uncommon in the United States. I've represented lots of cities and towns that have made that same decision. What is almost unheard of in my experience is the level of corruption and deceit and deception that occurred in Flint from those that were involved in hiding the presence and evidence of lead contamination. Normally, when you have an exceedance of the lead action level, it's one of the first things that a drinking water system operator knows, and there is immediate ramifications. So when I would represent drinking water systems, if there was an exceedance of the lead action level, I would get a phone call immediately as their outside counsel, and we would report immediately, and we would begin water delivery immediately, and we would immediately begin a sanitary survey of the system. So this goes back to sort of the last point that I made about public corruption, which is it's a major obstacle to water security. And it was corruption within the city that allowed that tragedy to take place. And let's call a spade a spade. It's not just corruption, it's racism. And I think we have to embrace that this was environmental racism. A lot of what drove that corruption was racism. And so I think that is a big part of addressing the issue, is just calling it what it is. How we're going to deal with whether or not implementing this particular proposed settlement is going to be good. A lot of what's driving the settlement has been looking at other settlements similar to asbestos claims, black lung claims, and tobacco claims, which is setting up a trust that will be administered by an independent trustee and settling claims outside of the trust. Whether or not the amount is sufficient and how the trustees are going to allocate it, I don't know. But here's one of my concerns. One of my concerns is that we're talking about chronic learning disabilities for thousands of children. And so quantifying damages there is going to be very, very difficult. On top of that, what I think you have to be concerned about is there are going to be other peripheral issues that I don't know that this settlement is going to cover. For example, what about the spread of Legionella that occurred immediately afterwards? There were lives lost to Legionella spread in Flint. And I think the Legionella spread, and this is me speaking just as an opinion, was related to the elevated lead levels, which is, I think, when they switched to the Flint River, you saw elevated chloride levels that led them to think that there were elevated disinfectant byproducts, which means the city lowered its disinfectant residual, didn't put as much chlorine into the system, and that allowed Legionella to spread. And so do we take into account some of the peripheral issues that were related to the lead contamination, or is this settlement only there to address people who are suffering from lead poisoning? And I think those are issues that are going to still have to be worked out in the settlement.